Welcome to Bitter Clues. I'm Brian. What you're about to hear is one of the most disturbing cases ever to emerge from South Korea. Drugs have the power to warp the mind, twist reality, and trigger hallucinations that can lead to dangerous, unpredictable behavior. Sometimes those hallucinations spiral so far out of control that they destroy everything in their path. This is the story of a family torn apart by drugs. On May 21, 1989, a resident named Lee, who lived in a townhouse district, was heading up to the roof to repair a water tank. But he did not make it far. On the staircase of the second floor, he stumbled upon a horrifying sight: the naked body of a man. A television antenna cable was wrapped tightly around the man's neck, as though he had been hanged. Before Lee could comprehend what he was seeing, another horror demanded his attention. He smelled smoke. Following it, he traced it to a home on the second floor. Inside, he saw a blanket burning. And then, something even more terrifying: the lifeless bodies of a woman and two young boys. Their heads had been severed and placed together in the corner of the room. The gruesome discovery shocked the resident and left police investigators shaken when they arrived at the scene. Authorities soon determined that the man on the staircase and the victims inside the home were members of the same family. The man was a 30-year-old named Yo-in-jun. He lived there with his wife, also surnamed Lee, and their two sons, just 8 and 6 years old. From the beginning, detectives knew this was no ordinary crime. It was an act of extreme and senseless violence. As the investigation progressed, suspicion centered on Yo-in himself. Police believed he had murdered his wife and children, set fire to the home, and then attempted to take his own life. But why? Why would the head of a household brutally kill his family, especially in such a grotesque way? The details painted a horrifying picture. The wife and children were found wearing pajamas, suggesting they had been asleep when attacked. Her nightclothes were torn, her body covered in slashes. The two boys had suffered countless knife wounds, so many they could not be easily counted. Their eyes appeared to have been stabbed. And then, the final act of brutality. Their heads had been cut off, gathered in one corner, while their bodies were covered with a blanket and set ablaze. If this really was the work of Yo-in-jun, how could he kill his own family in such a grotesque manner? Police believed they had clear reasons to name him as their prime suspect. First of all, he already had a criminal record. He had 8 prior convictions, including charges for violating the Cannabis Control Act and for assault. Just 2 months earlier, in March 1989, he had been imprisoned for assault and was released on May 1st. Not long after his release, he moved his family from their home in Busan's Chungju district to a townhouse in Kweidongdong, located in the city's Haeundae district. But his behavior did not improve. According to neighbors, arguments between Yoon and his wife erupted almost every night. Their shouting matches became a regular disturbance. The couple had been together for 10 years, and in 1986, 3 years before their deaths, they had officially registered their marriage. Yo-in-jun had a long history of trouble throughout his relationship with his wife. She was likely deeply unhappy with him, and their conflicts only grew worse after they married. To make matters worse, Jun suffered from delusional jealousy, an obsession with his wife that fueled constant tension at home. But the most decisive reason police named Jun as their prime suspect was tied to methamphetamines. In the 1980s, Busan was a major hub for meth. At that time, a powerful dealer named Lee Wang-soon was the biggest supplier in the region, exporting drugs not only across Korea, but even to Japan. Between the mid-1970s and early 1990s, meth use spread rapidly in the city. What began as a drug popular among criminals and workers in nightlife establishments soon filtered into wider society. office workers, and even teenagers. By some estimates, as many as 100,000 people in Busan were using meth during that period. Jun himself worked at a bar, where he regularly injected meth. Among all illicit drugs, methamphetamine is especially notorious for causing intense hallucinations. Addicts often commit shocking, violent crimes while under its influence. Many do not even try to escape afterward. Some attempt suicide, while others are caught in the act. When police arrived at the crime scene, they knew immediately this was not an ordinary murder. They suspected Jun had been high on meth, acting out in a hallucinatory frenzy. The day after the bodies were discovered, an autopsy was performed on Jun. As investigators expected, the results confirmed he had meth in his system at the time of the crime. Police continued their investigation and pieced together what they believed had happened. At around 7 a.m. on May 21st, Yoin Jun returned home high on meth. He argued with his wife, and soon his hallucinations took over. In his distorted state of panic and confusion, he saw his wife and children not as family, but as terrifying monsters. He lost all sense of reason and committed an unthinkable crime. Grabbing a kitchen knife, he brutally attacked his wife and 2 sons, mutilating their bodies in the process. Afterward, he covered them with a blanket and set it on fire. Then, stepping out onto the staircase, he stripped off his clothes and hanged himself. One can only imagine the terror his wife and young boys must have felt in those final moments, attacked by the very person who should have protected them. Yet there would be no punishment for the offender, because the suspect was already dead. With no trial possible, police closed the case. No one would ever truly pay for the victims' deaths. This case remains one of the most disturbing drug-related crimes in Korean history. It forced prosecutors and police to confront the devastating link between narcotics and violence. From then on, whenever a violent crime occurred, investigators began treating drug influence as a top priority. Even so, more than 30 years later, drug-related crimes continue to rise. In the past decade alone, there have been at least 14 drug-related murder cases in Korea. Yet, courts often hand down lenient sentences, citing the offender's mental and physical weakness due to drug use. Experts warn this is a dangerous approach, as suspects hallucinating on drugs can commit acts of extreme cruelty. The lesson is clear. Even a spark of curiosity about drugs can end in tragedy, harming not only yourself, but also the people you love most. That's all for today. Thanks for watching The Bitter Clues.